I guess we can just go sit down and relax now while Evan does all this work.
No, we're working hard too.
Oh, we are.
Don't
True.
sell yourself short.
Yeah, that is true. I'm working on my tan up here.
All here to here.
Hello, I'm the freshest in the place. Running laps with my vibe and you can't keep the pace. Head to toe while I'm dripping in style. I'm fly with $1 million smile.
A really good breakfast at a diner nearby. Got some a little greasy, but like, yeah, grease is fuel.
Welcome to Velo's first ever field test, where we're going through a slew of all-road bikes, including the bike behind us here, the BMC Roadmachine. The BMC Roadmachine fits into a 3-bike lineup, including the Roadmachine Amp, which is their e-bike, as well as the Roadmachine X, and this bike, the Roadmachine. Those 2 bikes share the same frame, but the Roadmachine X gets wider, more gravelly tires and a 1x drivetrain, as well as a suspension stem, whereas this bike gets 2x drivetrains across the lineup and more road handling. That being said, it has a ton of features that make this fit right into the all-road lineup here. It gets a down tube storage hatch, it gets a built-in rear tail light, it gets fully internal cable routing, and overall, it doesn't really rely on any gimmicks or any added suspension here. It just relies on careful engineering to make a bike that we thought handled and felt really good, right?
So the thing to understand about the BMC Roadmachine is that when you look at the field of all-road bikes or endurance bikes that are out there, this one is going to tend towards roads that are smoother. It's a little closer to a race bike than some of the other things that are out there. And that just means that the wheelbase is a little bit longer, the bottom bracket is a little bit higher, but it's still not quite touching on something like a tarmac or a traditional race bike that you're thinking of.
My experience with this bike, like if I were going back to back with one of those really quick handling road bikes, like this, in my experience, requires very little adjustment. But at the same time, like it has that quick kind of turn in, but when you're kind of climbing, it doesn't flop around like some of these all-road bikes can because the trail figure is a little bit tighter here. Overall, I would call the handling kind of responsive, but safe.
Yes,
and I think that
absolutely agree with that. You get that all-road feeling where it takes care of you, but it is a little bit sharper than some of the other ones out there. And if that's what you're looking for, this is the one to choose.
Can you tell me more about your experience with ride comfort here?
Right, so with this bike, it really walks that fine line between giving you a lot of feedback, and again, that goes towards it being more of a road style all-road bike, and it gives you that feedback. But in comparison to what you'd find on a race bike, something like the Athos, there's just much more comfort there. Everything is a little duller when it's those small bumps in the pavement that sort of grind on you all day. And it's also a little bit shorter and a little bit taller. And so when you're going for a long day, you still get all the feedback that you want, but it just takes the edge off just a little bit. And there are softer bikes out there. This one is a little bit harder on that, but that's kind of what you're looking for if you're looking at the BMC.
Yeah, I think you want a bike to have a little bit of vibration, to feel like you're doing something, and this has it, but it's not so much vibration that it feels jarring or uncomfortable as you ride it longer, right?
That's exactly right. And it is also worth noting that we are running 32s on all of these bikes, but this will take up to a 34 with the 2x. So you could adjust even more. If you were like, this is a little too stiff for me, you could go to a 34, a little lower pressure. You have that space. You could also go down to a 28 if you really want to like feel like you're on a race bike.
Who's doing a 28 anymore?
I mean, I'm
It's
old.
you.
It's me.
All right, Josh, we have talked about the bike's handling and the ride comfort as well. Let's talk about some hits or misses on the build of this bike. Now, we should probably caveat here that this is a little bit nicer, or a lot nicer really, than the rest of the bikes that we have here. It's got the Dura-Ace drivetrain, it's got the DT Swiss ERC 1100 wheels. That being said, I think there are a lot of hits here and a lot of things that carry on to other parts of the Roadmachine lineup, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if we were looking at the slightly lower model, we would have a 2-piece bar and stem, but the fit would be exactly the same. The routing would still be internal. It would be Ultegra instead of Dura-Ace. You're not going to notice a difference, really. Let's be honest here, people. You would still get the light either way, which I think is kind of an interesting selling point on this. I tend to use a radar, so I didn't use it as much, but I think it's cool that it's there. Also, you get down tube storage on this bike, which you're just not really going to find on a race bike. And so that is, if you're into down tube storage, I mean, that's one of the things about an all-road bike is that you get not only the down tube storage, but there's bento box mounts up top as well. So you're set up for going longer and carrying the stuff that you need to carry.
Yeah, I really do feel like BMC went a little bit above where they needed to meet the minimum requirements for someone like this. The down tube storage is legitimately useful, even though the hatch itself is kind of small, but that's kind of the case everywhere. The light is something that I really do like, just something that they're thinking a lot about. And ergonomically, I think they really killed it on this bike, honestly. I think the overall thing that we're kind of converging to here with this BMC Roadmachine is that it's just really good at everything. The key things that we like are available regardless of how much you spend, and those key traits hold up. All right, y'all, now it's time for livability with the BMC Roadmachine, and I'm gonna give this bike a 4 out of 10, which admittedly isn't very high, but it's par for the course for a bike with this much integration. Demerits are going to the one-piece carbon handlebar that is going to be expensive to replace, much less adjust for fit, as well as the press fit bottom bracket. Let me explain though. So take a look at this bike. It looks really clean, but basically everything here is proprietary. And that starts, frankly, at the steer tube and the headset. While it's nominally 1 1/8 in diameter, it is shaped specifically so you can route the brake hoses around it. Further, it doesn't use a standard steer tube expander plug or even a proprietary expander plug. Rather, what they have is that the inside of the steer tube is filled, and then you have to thread in something to use as an anchor bolt for the headset top cap. And honestly, that top cap is also proprietary, and often with these bikes, I've found that they fit so tight that if you kind of try and jiggle the stem free to make any adjustments, I found that it actually mars the top of the stem, which will look ugly really quickly. Elsewhere, as I mentioned, you have a press fit 86 bottom bracket, which I think is actually generally a pretty good standard so long as you're using Shimano cranks. As you see here, it also has a proprietary seat post, which I haven't had any issues with here. It hasn't had any creaking issues. It's stayed right at the torque level it needs to be, no slippage. The accessories here I think are really well done. I would say that the bottle cages hold bottles nicely and they mold around the down tube of the frame. There's also the down tube storage hatch, which while it's not as big as I would like to fit what I would like in there, it does come with a little sleeve so you can put in whatever you need to. And the insides of that down tube storage hatch are finished quite nicely. I don't have any qualms with it or worries about it snagging on a windbreaker or anything like that. The DT Swiss wheels here set up easily with the tubeless Continental Control tires that we have here. No issues there, highly recommended. And so again, I'm giving this a 4 out of 10 for all the integration that's here that makes it tough to adjust, especially if you are a second owner or if you need to make adjustments after purchase. All right, I think we should start with the pros.
Right, so when you think about this bike and you look at the pros of it, one thing I really want to call out is that the details have been thought through. But the main crux of what you're thinking about with this bike is that it's a bike that leaves you involved in the ride. It still has that feedback that you're used to with a racier bike, but at the same time it takes the edge off. It just sort of sandpapers the sharp edges so that it can take you all day and you're not gonna be like dying at the end of a long day.
Okay, so it's a bike that just feels all around refined, both like looking at it and riding it. What cons have you found?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing about it is that in the field of all-road bikes, this one only goes up to 36 with the front derailleur, which is probably fine for most people, and it sort of fits with the idea of this bike being a little more towards a racier feeling. However, if you want to put bigger tires on, you can't with this one unless you go to one by. Then the other thing is, it has to be mentioned that the price is a little bit higher. Now, we have capped our bikes at a certain range, but in terms of what you're getting and in this range, this bike tends towards the higher side.
Yeah, definitely premium pricing. All right, Josh, last question. Who's the BMC Roadmachine for?
Right, so when you think about who this bike is for, what you're really thinking about is, in the scheme of all-road bikes, all-road means smooth to gravel, like everything in between, all roads. And this bike is going to skew towards the smoother roads. It's on the smoother side of that. You want a bike that leaves you involved, but just sort of sandpapers off the sharp edges. And it's right there for you when you want to go for the long days. And it's also there for you on the short days when you want some of that feedback still there. And that's what the BMC Roadmachine does really well. It's right there in the name. It's the Roadmachine.
Yeah, I've found that this bike has been really impressive. I'm glad you feel the same way. I think this is one of our favorite bikes in this Velo field test so far. All right, that's it for the BMC Roadmachine review. Stay tuned for more reviews and more content to come. See you on the next one.